All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we're diving deep into the world of OnlyFans.
Oh, yeah, this one's going to be interesting.
You guys know we love to tackle the tough stuff, and this is definitely up there.
You sent me a huge stack of sources on this. It looks like we've got a lot to cover.
We do, we do. I mean, this whole debate about whether OnlyFans is a platform for empowerment or exploitation,
Yeah, it's complex.
it really is. I think what's so fascinating about this deep dive is how it forces us to look at our own beliefs, like about sex work and the digital economy and like what even is work these days.
Definitely. And the pandemic really threw all that into question, even more so.
Totally. One of the sources actually mentioned that OnlyFans saw something crazy, like a 400% increase
Wow.
in creators in just the first year of the pandemic.
That's a huge jump.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at both sides of the argument, the good and the bad,
Okay.
empowerment arguments,
Right.
financial freedom, all that, versus, the risk of objectification, exploitation, all the downsides.
Makes sense.
We'll also be looking at some real-world examples.
Good. Yeah.
Like, remember when Bella Thorne joined OnlyFans?
Oh, yeah, that caused quite a stir.
It did. So
Yeah.
we'll be unpacking that and, like, what it meant for the platform as a whole. Okay, so let's jump in.
Sounds good.
One of the biggest arguments in favor of OnlyFans is this whole idea of financial independence, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's especially interesting when you think about creators who maybe haven't had a lot of traditional opportunities.
Exactly, and that's something a lot of your sources highlighted.
Yeah.
Like people who've been marginalized or just haven't been able to access, like, the standard 9 to 5.
Totally.
And with OnlyFans, they have the potential to, make a lot of money.
Can set their own hours, they're in control.
Right, be their own boss,
Yeah.
all that.
Which is really appealing.
And I think it's important to acknowledge that a lot of people are finding real success.
Oh, for sure.
There was one study, I think it was from like 2023,
Okay.
that found over 60%
60%?
of OnlyFans creators said they felt more financially secure
Wow.
after joining.
That's a lot.
So it's clearly providing, some real economic opportunities for people.
Yeah, and it plays into this larger trend we're seeing, right? Like the whole gig economy, people wanting flexibility.
Yes, absolutely. And there's also this argument that OnlyFans could actually help destigmatize sex work.
That's an interesting one.
Right. Because it's bringing it out in the open, kind of challenging those societal taboos.
Yeah, making it more mainstream in a way.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, but
There's a but.
there's always a but, right?
Yeah.
There are some concerns, and I think it's important that we address those as well.
Yeah, definitely. We have to look at both sides.
So let's dive into some of the darker aspects
Yeah.
of OnlyFans.
All right. So where do we start?
Well, I think one of the biggest concerns that came up in a lot of your sources was the normalization of objectification.
Right.
Like, is OnlyFans just reinforcing harmful stereotypes?
About women especially?
Yes, about women and sex work in general.
Yeah, and that's a big concern. I mean, if that's what's happening.
It's tricky because some people might argue that it's empowering.
Right, like they're choosing to present themselves in that way.
Exactly. But then the question becomes, how much agency do they really have?
Exactly.
Especially when you consider that, some people might be driven to OnlyFans because of financial desperation.
Yeah, yeah. And what about coercion?
Ooh, that's a whole other issue.
It is. Like, are there situations where people are being pressured or even forced?
To create content,
Yeah, that they're not actually comfortable with.
it gets really murky really fast.
It does.
And then on top of all that, there's the whole issue of regulation,
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
or lack thereof, I should say.
Right. I mean, it's the Wild West out there in some ways.
It is. And that can lead to some real risks for creators, like when it comes to data privacy and piracy.
Oh, for sure.
We've actually seen some pretty high-profile data breaches on the platform.
Yeah, that's scary.
It is scary, and it really makes you question, who's responsible for protecting these creators.
Right. And a lot of the sources were asking that, like, what role should OnlyFans play
Yeah,
in ensuring that, things are ethical, that creators are safe?
it's a tough question.
It is. It is. Where do you draw the line?
Right. Like, how much responsibility should a platform have for the content that's on it?
Mm-hmm. And is it even possible to regulate something like this?
Without, stifling creativity or freedom of expression.
Yeah, it's a balance, isn't it?
It is. So, okay, we've talked about financial freedom. We've talked about objectification.
Right.
But I think there's another layer to this whole empowerment versus exploitation debate.
Which is?
consent and agency.
Okay, yeah.
Like, we've touched on this a bit, but it's worth digging a little deeper.
Right, because it's complicated.
It is. It is. Because even if someone consents to creating and sharing explicit content, the question is, are they truly empowered if they're doing it because they feel like they have no other choice?
Right, like if it's purely driven by economic pressures.
Exactly. And I think that's where things get really morally gray.
It does make you think, like, what does the popularity of OnlyFans say about our society as a whole?
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. Does it challenge existing power structures, or does it reinforce them?
And the fact that it exploded during the pandemic,
Yeah, that was
it
wild.
really highlights how, economic vulnerability can play into all of this.
For sure. People were desperate.
They were. They were. And I think that's something that we can't ignore when we're talking about OnlyFans.
Definitely not.
Okay, so I want to shift gears a bit and talk about Bella Thorne.
Okay, yeah.
Because I think her experience on OnlyFans really encapsulates a lot of these tensions we've been talking about.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
It was. So for those who don't remember, Bella Thorne is an actress.
Right, she was a Disney star, I think.
Yeah, yeah. And in 2020, she joined OnlyFans.
And it broke the internet, basically.
It kind of did. It kind of did. She made, like, a ton of money in a very short amount of time.
Millions, I think.
Millions, yeah. But it also sparked a lot of controversy.
Oh, yeah.
Because people were saying, she's already rich and famous.
Did you really need to be on OnlyFans?
Exactly. And is she taking away opportunities from smaller creators who are actually relying on the platform?
And it also kind of muddied the waters, Like, what does it mean for OnlyFans as a whole?
Right, because suddenly it's not just about, sex workers or people who are traditionally marginalized.
Yeah, you have a major celebrity jumping in.
Yeah, and does that change the perception of the platform? Does it make it more mainstream?
Or does it exploit the existing creators?
Yeah, it's a really complicated situation.
It is, and it raises some important questions about who benefits from platforms like this.
And whether everyone has an equal chance of success.
Yeah, for sure.
So, Bella Thorne's story is definitely one that's worth thinking about.
It is.
Okay, so there's one more thing I want to touch on.
Okay, what's that?
And that's the whole incident in 2021 when OnlyFans briefly announced they were going to ban sexually explicit content.
Oh, yeah, that was crazy.
It was. Like, can you imagine?
What a mess.
It was a huge mess. I mean, the backlash was intense.
People were furious.
They were. Creators felt totally betrayed.
Rightfully so, I think.
Yeah, because this was the platform that had, allowed them to build their careers.
And suddenly they were pulling the rug out from under them.
Exactly. And it really brought up this question of, whose interests are OnlyFans actually serving?
Yeah. Like, did they genuinely care about the creators?
Or were they just trying to appease financial institutions who were getting uncomfortable?
With the nature of the content.
Right, right. And ultimately, they ended up reversing the decision.
Yeah, they had to.
But I think the whole thing really damaged their reputation.
It did. It showed that maybe they weren't as committed to their creators as they claimed to be.
Yeah, and it made people wonder, what could happen in the future.
Will they try something like this again?
Exactly. And I think that uncertainty is something that a lot of creators are still grappling with.
Yeah, for sure. It's a precarious situation.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have. It's a lot to take in.
It is. And I think it's clear that OnlyFans is a very complex platform.
With a lot of gray areas.
It has the potential for empowerment.
Yeah, that's definitely there.
Because it also has the potential for exploitation.
And everything in between.
And everything in between. And
yeah.
Ultimately, I think it's up to each individual to decide
where they stand on it all.
Exactly. To weigh the risks and the benefits and figure out what feels right for them.
But what's so interesting is that this whole conversation goes beyond just OnlyFans, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, we're talking about the future of work, the digital economy, the role of technology in our lives.
And how all of that intersects with issues like sex work and consent and agency.
It's a big tangled web.
It is. And I think one thing your sources brought up that I thought was really interesting to consider.
Okay, what's that?
Is the rise of blockchain technology and how that could potentially impact platforms like OnlyFans.
That's an interesting one.
Right. Because some people are saying that blockchain could give creators more control.
Over their content, over their earnings.
Exactly. So it'd be interesting to see how that all plays out in the coming years.
Definitely. Things are changing so rapidly.
They are. They are. So we've given you guys a lot to think about today, but we want to leave you with this final thought.
Hit us with it.
Could blockchain actually be the key to a more ethical and equitable future for online content creation?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. It's something to ponder.
It is.
All right. That's it for our deep dive on OnlyFans.
Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. And thanks to everyone for listening.
Keep those questions coming.
Until next time.
Bye. Bye.